Welcome to International Management, the podcast that breaks down the core challenges and strategies of global business. Based on Orlando Casabon's scripts for his international management class, each episode offers practical insights, clear strategies, real-world examples, and expert guidance to help you navigate complex global landscapes. For additional resources, visit casabon.com. Now, let's dive into the essentials of international management.
Welcome to our deep dive, everyone. We're going international today.
That's right. We're diving into the fascinating world of culture in international business.
You know, I think a lot of our listeners out there are really looking to up their game when it comes to navigating different cultures. And I'm excited to get into it. We're going to equip you with some seriously powerful tools today.
Yeah.
Specifically, we'll be talking about Hofstede's 6 cultural dimensions and the G-lobe study.
Those are two absolute classics.
Yeah. Have you ever wondered, why luxury goods are so popular in Russia? These frameworks are really going to help us understand trends like that.
That's right.
And so much more.
It's interesting, we often talk about culture in such a superficial way.
Yeah.
The food, the festivals, the clothes.
The tip of the iceberg.
Exactly. But culture goes so much deeper than that. It shapes how we think, how we behave, how we interact.
Absolutely.
And especially how we do business on a global scale.
I think that's a really great point. So we're not just talking about, enjoying spicy food or celebrating certain holidays. We're talking about something much more fundamental.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, think of culture as this kind of collective programming of the mind. It's not something we're born with. It's learned. It's passed down through generations.
It evolves.
Exactly. It's constantly adapting. It's kind of like an iceberg. We see the tip, the visible stuff, but what lies beneath the surface, those values, those hidden assumptions, that's what really shapes behavior.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So those hidden assumptions are like the underwater part of the iceberg that can really sink a business deal if you're not prepared.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where Hofstede's cultural dimensions come in.
Okay.
His model gives us this framework for decoding these differences.
It's a good place to start.
Yeah. And one of the most, I think, fundamental dimensions is social orientation.
Okay.
This is that balance between individualism and collectivism.
So are you saying that there's a big difference in how, let's say an American company might approach decision-making versus a Japanese company?
Absolutely.
Okay.
In individualistic cultures like the U.S., decisions are often made quickly.
Right.
There's a focus on individual initiative, individual achievement.
Getting things done.
Yeah. But in collectivist cultures like Japan, decisions are much more consensus-driven. There's this emphasis on group harmony, maintaining those long-term relationships.
It's more about the process than the outcome, in a way.
In a sense, yeah.
That's really interesting. So if you're an American manager and you're working with a Japanese team, you can't just walk in and bark orders.
Right. That would be a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
You really have to understand those cultural nuances and adapt your leadership style accordingly.
Absolutely. So that's social orientation. But there's another important dimension that you mentioned, power orientation.
Yeah. This is all about how different cultures view authority and hierarchy.
Okay, so this is making me think about different leadership styles. So like a boss who's very hands-on, very authoritative, they might thrive in one culture but completely fail in another.
Absolutely. In high-power distance cultures, we see a lot of this in Asia. There's this strong acceptance of hierarchy, deference to authority. But in low-power distance cultures, like those Scandinavian countries, people are much more likely to question authority and prefer a more collaborative leadership style.
So imagine like a German executive.
Oh, yeah.
Who's used to very direct communication.
Right.
Tries to lead a team in India.
Yeah, that would be quite a clash.
A cultural collision.
Exactly. And then you've got uncertainty orientation.
Okay.
This is all about how comfortable different cultures are with ambiguity and risk.
Taking a chance.
Yeah, some cultures, they have high uncertainty avoidance, like Germany, for example. They crave predictability, structure. They love rules and regulations.
I want to know what to expect.
Exactly. But then you have cultures with high uncertainty acceptance, like the U.S. They're much more open to change, to taking risks.
So if you think about it like contract negotiations between a company from a high uncertainty avoidance culture and a company from a low uncertainty avoidance culture.
Yeah.
There's going to have to be some give and take there to find a common ground.
Absolutely. Clarity and transparency are going to be essential in those situations.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about social orientation, power orientation, uncertainty orientation. What's next?
Goal orientation.
Okay.
This is the one that often gets labeled as those masculine versus feminine values.
Right.
But it's really about what a society prioritizes: achievement and assertiveness, or cooperation and quality of life.
Okay, so give me an example.
So in a culture with a very aggressive goal orientation, like the US, you tend to see a lot of emphasis on competition, individual success, those material rewards.
The American dream.
Exactly. But in a culture with a more passive goal orientation like Sweden, there's a greater focus on work-life balance, social responsibility, collaboration.
It's a different set of values.
Exactly. It's really about understanding what are those core values that drive motivation in different cultures.
That makes a lot of sense.
All right.
So we're up to, what is it, 4 now?
Yeah, 4 down, 2 to go.
Hit me.
The next one is time orientation.
Okay.
How a culture views time and planning.
Interesting.
You have short-term oriented cultures, like the U.S. again. They value quick results, immediate gratification.
Costs us money.
Exactly. But long-term oriented cultures, like China, they're playing the long game. They're patient, they're persistent, they're willing to delay gratification for those future rewards.
What would be an example of that difference playing out?
Think about an American company trying to build a long-term business partnership in China.
Oh, I see, yeah.
They might need to adjust their expectations about the pace of progress.
Right, patience is key.
Exactly. And then the final dimension, indulgence versus restraint.
Ooh, this one sounds interesting. Lay it on me.
It's about how much a society embraces, enjoying life, having fun,
Okay.
versus sticking to strict social norms.
So would you say, like, Denmark is an indulgent culture?
Yeah, Denmark's a great example of an indulgent culture. They really value personal freedom, leisure time.
Yeah.
Whereas in restrained cultures, you see a lot of this in the Middle East. There's this emphasis on social order, self-control.
It's interesting how these cultural values are so deeply ingrained. So Hofstede gives us 6 dimensions, but it's just a model.
Of course.
It can't capture everything.
No model can perfectly capture the complexity of human culture, but Hofstede's work has been hugely influential.
A good starting point.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
It lays this strong foundation for understanding cultural differences. But if we want to go even deeper, there's the GLOBE study.
Okay, tell me more. How does GLOBE build on Hofstede's work?
Well, the GLOBE study, it stands for Global Leadership and Organizational Behavior Effectiveness.
Catchy.
Yeah. It was a massive research project, hundreds of researchers from all over the world, studying leadership, organizational practices across tons of different cultures.
So it's like they took Hofstede's work and just, like, ran with it.
In a way, yeah. They added more dimensions, creating an even more nuanced picture.
Okay, like what kind of dimensions?
For example, they added performance orientation. That looks at how much a society values achievement and excellence.
Okay.
They also included assertiveness, which measures how confrontational or competitive people are encouraged to be.
I can see how those would be crucial for understanding workplace dynamics,
Exactly.
or even marketing strategies in different countries. What else?
Well, they looked at future orientation. It's similar to Hofstede's time orientation, but with a focus on planning and delayed gratification.
Makes sense.
And they added a dimension called humane orientation that looks at compassion, fairness, generosity in a society.
So really zooming in on those values.
Yeah. But one of the things I find most useful about the GLOBE study is the concept of cultural clusters.
Oh, yeah, the cultural clusters. Tell me more about those.
It's like a map of the world, but organized by shared cultural characteristics.
Okay.
So instead of just looking at individual countries, they grouped countries together based on similarities in their cultural values and practices.
So it's like taking a step back to see the bigger picture.
Exactly. They identified 10 distinct clusters: Confucian Asia, South Asia, Latin America,
Oh, wow.
Nordic Europe, Anglo, Germanic Europe,
This is fascinating.
Latin Europe, Sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe.
So each of those clusters represents a unique set of cultural values,
Right.
practices. So helpful. It's like a cheat sheet for understanding the cultural landscape.
It really is. And if you're, let's say, expanding your business into Latin America, understanding the values of that cluster can give you such a leg up.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like leadership style, communication strategies, even your marketing campaigns, it's like having a secret weapon for navigating this complex global marketplace.
Exactly. But, beyond Hofstede and glo, there's another framework we need to talk about. Edward T. Hall's concept of high context and low context cultures.
Oh yes, communication styles. That's so important. I mean, a simple miscommunication can really derail a deal or a negotiation.
Absolutely. Hall's work is crucial for understanding how those communication styles differ across cultures.
So break it down for me. What's the difference between high context and low context?
Well, in low context cultures, communication is very direct.
Straightforward.
Exactly. You say what you mean, and people take your words at face value.
No need to read between the lines.
Exactly. But in high context cultures, communication is much more indirect, much more nuanced. Meaning is often implied rather than explicitly stated.
So it's like the context, the nonverbal cues, the relationships, all of that plays a role in understanding the message.
Exactly. It's more about the unspoken. So imagine someone from a low context culture like the US trying to do business in a high context culture like Japan.
They're going to miss a lot of those subtle cues.
Right. They might be saying the same words, but the meaning could be completely different.
It's like speaking two different languages.
Exactly. That's why understanding this framework is so important. You need to be able to adapt your communication style to the specific cultural context.
So if you're used to being very direct,
Right.
you might need to learn to be a bit more subtle when communicating in a high context culture.
And vice versa. If you're used to reading between the lines, you might need to be more explicit, more direct when you're dealing with someone from a low context culture.
This is so helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like a master class in cross-cultural communication.
It really is. And the beauty of all these frameworks is that they give us a starting point for understanding and appreciating the amazing diversity of human culture.
Okay, so the key takeaway here is that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to international business.
Absolutely.
You need to be adaptable, culturally intelligent, and willing to learn.
Couldn't agree more.
Wow. This has been an amazing start to our deep dive into the world of culture and international business.
I know, right? We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah. But like with any deep dive, we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to explore. Welcome back. We've laid the groundwork with Hofstede and glo, but now let's get practical.
I like it. Practical.
You're armed with these cultural frameworks. How do you actually use them in the real world of international business?
That's the million-dollar question, right? We've got all this knowledge.
Yeah.
How do we actually put it into action? So let's say you're managing a cross-cultural team. All those dimensions we talked about, individualism versus collectivism, power distance, communication styles, they suddenly become very real.
They do. It's like that orchestra analogy we talked about before.
Right.
Each team member is playing their own instrument, influenced by their cultural background. And the challenge is to harmonize all those different sounds.
To create a beautiful symphony.
Exactly. But where do you even begin? I mean, the potential for miscommunication, for conflict, it feels huge.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming. So how do you navigate that?
It all starts with respect and understanding. Remember, these frameworks highlight tendencies, not hard and fast rules.
Right.
You're going to have a spectrum of personalities and preferences within any culture.
So avoid stereotyping. Just because someone's from a high-power, distance culture doesn't automatically mean they're going to be submissive or avoid speaking up.
Exactly. The key is to encourage open communication, curiosity, and a willingness to learn from each other.
So create a team culture where people feel safe to share their perspective.
Exactly.
Even if it's different. What about when conflict does arise? Because it inevitably will, right? How do you handle conflict in a cross-cultural context?
That's a great question. And you're right, it's bound to happen. And cultural differences can really make things tricky.
Yeah.
First, you have to recognize that what's considered appropriate conflict resolution varies widely.
Oh, for sure.
Some cultures, direct confrontation is seen as healthy.
Right.
Others, it's deeply disrespectful.
Like if a manager is used to saying, all right, let's hash this out right now.
Yeah.
That might not go over so well with the team from Japan.
Not at all. Mediation might be more effective in those cultures, bringing in a neutral third party.
Okay.
The key is to really understand everyone's perspective and guide the team toward a solution that respects everyone's cultural norms.
So you almost need to be a cultural detective.
I like that.
Observing, interpreting, adapting.
Yeah, and remember, conflict isn't always a bad thing.
Oh, absolutely.
If it's managed well,
Mm-hmm.
it can actually spark creativity, lead to better solutions.
Okay, let's talk about international negotiations.
Right. Yeah.
Because that feels like a minefield of potential cultural missteps.
Yeah. It can be. You've got to consider all those dimensions again. Think about, is it a win-win or a win-lose negotiation style? What's the role of hierarchy and formal titles? How comfortable are they with direct communication or expressing disagreement?
Yeah. Even something as simple as body language could send the wrong message.
Absolutely. A firm handshake in one culture could be considered aggressive in another.
Right. So do your research beforehand.
Exactly.
Understand the cultural nuances.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just about knowing the rules. It's also about building rapport.
Yeah.
Trust.
Absolutely. Invest time in relationship building.
Mm-hmm.
In many cultures, especially those high context cultures, a strong personal connection is essential.
Right. It's a foundation.
Before any business can even happen. This is making me realize that cultural intelligence isn't just some abstract idea. It's a real skill.
Yeah, it can make or break your success in international business.
That's right. Being adaptable, observant, respectful,
Yeah.
recognizing that there are many different ways of doing business, and none of them are inherently better than others.
I love that. All right, so we've talked about managing teams, negotiating deals. What about marketing? I mean, you can really miss the mark if you're not in tune with the cultural nuances of your target audience.
For sure. A campaign that's a hit in one country could be a total flop in another.
Yeah.
Think back to that luxury goods example. The appeal of status symbols, it varies so much depending on things like power distance and uncertainty avoidance.
So a brand that emphasizes individuality, rebelliousness, that might do well in the U.S., but it could fall flat in a more collectivist culture
Yeah.
that values conformity.
Exactly. Market research is key. Don't just translate your slogans.
Right.
You have to understand the deeper values, the aspirations, the anxieties that drive consumer behavior in each market.
It's about speaking to the heart, not just the head.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
But what about when you are marketing in cultures that are very different from your own? How do you avoid accidentally causing offense?
Sensitivity and due diligence are so important. Consult with local experts, get feedback from diverse perspectives, be willing to adapt your campaign if it's not resonating.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where your brand message aligns with the cultural values of your target market.
That's it. Creating a connection that feels authentic.
All right, let's shift gears a bit and talk about ethical considerations.
Okay.
Because this feels especially crucial in today's globalized world.
It is. You're dealing with different legal systems, labor practices, environmental standards, even gift-giving customs.
Right.
What's considered acceptable in one culture could be a major ethical violation in another.
Like when a company operates in a country with lower labor costs or weaker environmental regulations, there's potential for exploitation there if they're not careful.
Absolutely. And it's not always about intentional wrongdoing. Sometimes it's just a lack of awareness, understanding of the local context.
So companies need to establish clear ethical guidelines that apply across the board.
Absolutely. It's about having that moral compass to guide your decisions no matter where you are in the world and being proactive. Don't wait for ethical dilemmas to come up.
Right.
Talk to your stakeholders, employees, customers, suppliers, the local community.
Transparency, accountability.
It's about building trust and be willing to learn and adapt. Your own cultural perspective might not be the only valid one.
Be open to feedback.
Yeah. Be ready to adjust your practices if they don't align with your values. This is about more than just making money.
It's about doing business the right way.
It is. It's about being a responsible global citizen.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. We've covered so much ground.
We have.
But it feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
That's the thing with culture, isn't it? There's always more to learn. But I think we've given our listeners some really valuable tools and insights.
Yeah, I'm feeling much more confident about navigating these cross-cultural challenges.
That's what we're here for.
Remember, everyone, cultural intelligence is a journey.
It is.
Not a destination.
Keep learning, keep adapting, and keep those deep dives going.
I love that. So in the final part of our deep dive, we're going to look ahead to the future of international business in this increasingly interconnected and diverse world.
It's going to be fascinating. We'll discuss the emerging trends, the challenges, the opportunities for businesses that are embracing the power of cultural intelligence.
So stay tuned for part 3, where we'll wrap up our exploration of culture and international business and leave you with some inspiring insights and actionable takeaways.
It's going to be a grand finale.
Welcome back to our final deep dive into the world of culture and international business. We've explored those powerful frameworks, we've tackled those tough scenarios, and now I think it's time to look ahead. What does the future hold for businesses in this increasingly interconnected world, this diverse world?
That's the big question, isn't it? I mean, globalization isn't slowing down. Technology is changing faster than ever.
Yeah.
It creates amazing opportunities, but the need for cultural intelligence is only getting more intense.
So it's not just about knowing about those differences anymore. Businesses really need to be able to anticipate and adapt to them, right?
Exactly, yeah. Think about things like AI, automation.
Mm-hmm.
They're transforming industries, but they also bring up new ethical and cultural considerations.
That's true.
Like, how do you make sure that AI algorithms aren't perpetuating biases? How do you manage a global workforce that's increasingly reliant on remote collaboration across time zones, cultures?
So many new challenges. It's almost like a new frontier of cross-cultural issues. What skills do you think are going to be most essential for success in this new landscape?
Adaptability, as we talked about, but it goes beyond just being flexible, being comfortable with ambiguity, embracing continuous learning, being able to pivot quickly.
And to be able to keep up.
Yeah, in response to changing market dynamics and cultural trends.
So it's not about knowing all the right answers.
Right.
It's about knowing how to ask the right questions.
Exactly. And I think empathy is going to be even more valuable, being able to really understand, connect with people from different cultures.
To really see things from their perspective.
Yeah, to see the world through their eyes. That's going to be essential for building trust, for resolving conflicts, for successful collaborations.
It makes me think about the role of technology in all of this. It can connect us instantly across the globe,
Yeah.
but it can also create this sense of isolation, disconnect.
Right.
How do we balance those two?
That's such a crucial point. Technology is a powerful tool, but it has to be used thoughtfully.
Yeah.
We need to be using it in ways that actually foster human connection, understanding, cultural exchange.
So it's not about replacing face-to-face interaction.
No.
It's about using technology to enhance it.
Right.
To make those connections even stronger.
Exactly. To create a more inclusive, interconnected global community.
So businesses that prioritize cultural intelligence, they're going to have a real advantage.
Oh, absolutely. Attracting and retaining top global talent, building stronger relationships with partners and customers around the world,
Yeah.
creating products and services that really resonate with diverse markets.
So cultural intelligence is not just a nice to have, it's a must have.
A business imperative, absolutely. It's the key to unlocking those new markets, driving innovation, creating a more equitable, sustainable global economy.
It's bigger than all of us. This has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective.
Me too. It's been a great conversation.
Remember, everyone, cultural intelligence is a journey.
It really is, and it starts with curiosity.
Be open to learning, be willing to challenge your assumptions, embrace that amazing diversity of human experience.
It's what makes life interesting.
And on that note, we want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's been insightful, engaging, inspiring.
The world is your cultural oyster. Go out there and discover those pearls.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those deep dives going.